All right, so we got the full summary for 1109 here. We're going over the full chapter, and everything is confirmed by Zhoniin, which means that yes, the Gorosei are all showing up at Egghead at the end of this chapter here. They're coming there from Mary Joie via possibly Saturn's devil fruit powers. It's not fully explained, but he did use his like portal pentagram powers to get to Egghead in the first place, and he's using the same thing here to get the Gorosei there because they're all trying to stop Vegapunk from conveying his message to the world. Luffy is also witnessing this, so we'll see what happens with that, and we'll talk about it, of course, later. But first, we got to go over everything else. So, like I also talked about yesterday, we're getting a new cover story, and we're going back to Wano because we see Onigashima is sinking under the sea towards ancient Wano. Ancient Wano, of course, underneath the current Wano in the water. And I'm not really sure how this is happening because I think that Momonosuke last landed Onigashima on like the land of Wano. So maybe he picked it up again with his devil fruit powers and then put it in the water just to say good riddance to it. Or somebody else is doing this. It could also tie into Blackbeard because, you know, this is where Pluton is located. And now that Caribou has allegedly joined the Blackbeard Pirates and is going to tell them about everything with the ancient weapons that he knows, maybe this is going to lead towards that. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what happens. But anyway, the chapter starts where the last one ended. Recording that started in the last chapter was made in the past by Vegapunk. We could see Shaka and the other satellites with him too. Like we talked about yesterday, you know, coming off the end of the previous chapter, once Vegapunk was killed by Kizaru, it kind of set off this contingency where he started to play this broadcast where he's essentially going to spill the tea about the secrets of the world. I assume Emu, the ancient weapons, the Void Century, all that stuff. And I was speculating about like, is this like a pre-recorded thing or is this happening real time in like his consciousness that is like maybe become an AI in the computer from Punk Records, which is contained his brain is activated in. I don't think that's necessarily the case because it is confirmed in this chapter that this is like a recording that it happened because, you know, we see Shaka and the other satellites with him too, and we know Shaka got his freaking head blown off, so this is like pre-recorded. Vegapunk broadcast signal makes the Marines Denden Mushi all over the world broadcast his message and no one can turn them off. Wow. Shaka suggested that people around the world would need some time to prepare their screens in visual Denden Mushi, so Vegapunk tells people of the world that he will wait for 10 minutes so everyone can prepare their screens in visual Denden Mushi. Usopp and Nami group are seeing Vegapunk's message and they are confused about what Vegapunk is doing. No news about Zoro, Jinbei, and Brook in this chapter. So yeah, the useless group, sorry if I offended people, but in this arc they are especially useless. Don't really know what's going on because they haven't been doing anything. They're not in Ground Zero, they're kind of just sitting on their thumbs. And yeah, no news about Zoro, Jinbei, or Brook, or Lucci, or anything else, but it's fine. It'll probably all be off screen. Cut to Luffy. He's still grabbing Saturn's head. So yeah, the previous chapter we saw that after Kizaru had killed Vegapunk by stabbing him in the back, Luffy came in and was like, you guys aren't going anywhere. And he grabbed Kizaru like a freaking toy and squeezed him and then just planted his hand on Saturn's head, just stopping him from moving. And that's still happening coming into this chapter. The 4 members of the Gorosei and Mary Joie are talking to Saturn. Seems they use some kind of telepathy, probably related to their powers. So that's wild. I don't know if they all have telepathy or if this is just one of them that is giving them all of the ability to do this. I think that might be the same thing that's happening with these portals that Saturn can make, or if it isn't even Saturn that is doing this, or maybe it's Emu that is giving them all of this ability possibly. Not really sure. Also, I don't want to dive too deep in this, but it's also possible it's like a form of super advanced hockey maybe, you know, like similar to the Voice of All Things. I mean, Shanks was kind of doing something like this to Green Bull, but he was hitting him with that trail of electricity. This is kind of like thousands and thousands of miles away, you know, like straight up calling him via their minds. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it ultimately is hockey, but it's also not going to be explained in this chapter. So we're just going to have to speculate for now. But the Gorosei can all telepathically communicate with each other. That's wild. And the Gorosei ask, is Vegapunk really dead? And Saturn says, I think so. I saw how Kizaru killed him. And the Gorosei say, then he must have used his death to trigger that broadcast. And probably the source of the signal is in Egghead's labo phase. So yeah, this is like the Gorosei finally not being stupid and using some solid deductive reasoning. This is going to, of course, lead to them coming to Egghead at the end because they're trying to stop this broadcast. Now we see how people all over the world react and prepare to receive Vegapunk's signal. In Dressrosa, we see Rebecca, Leo, Kiros, and other people preparing the screens. Leo says, is that doctor whom Luffy Land is holding hostage? And Rebecca says, don't believe believe those news that tries to make Lucy look evil, Leo. In Fuchsia Village, Whoop Slap says that they haven't seen a projector in the village, so they will just hear Vegapunk's voice. The World Economy newspaper headquarters, Vivi is confused about where Luffy is in the recording. Morgan says the broadcast must be pre-recorded. Wapol is there with them too. It's nighttime in Water 7 and Iceberg wakes up and tells his genius secretary Alice to prepare some screens to broadcast Vegapunk's message. Alice says, I've already prepared screens all over the city, President Iceberg. In Kamabaka Queendom, Ivankov is surprised to see Vegapunk's new head. Dragon is thinking about that moment Shaka told him that he was about to die. Oh, I'm not surprised that this fraud dragon is still doing nothing and just reminiscing about something that he should have taken action over. We can see 2 more people's reactions in the other random islands. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, ACG Town. ACG Town has tons of awesome anime merchandise, such as clothing like t-shirts, hoodies, jackets, hats, and shoes, accessories like phone cases, keychains, backpacks, and toys and figures like plush and body pillows from all of your favorite series such as One Piece, Demon Slayer, Spy Family, Genshin Impact, Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, Honkai Star Rail, Naruto, and Dragon Ball. So guys, check the link in the description and make sure you use code BIGZ. That way you'll get 10% off of your purchase. Thanks guys. Back to Egghead Island, Luffy wonders why there's no damage to Saturn, so he decides to use another strategy. Kizaru shoots a laser beam from his eyes, but Luffy dodges it. Then Luffy slaps Kizaru and Saturn together with his giant hands using a very strong attack called Gomu Gomu no Dawn Symbol, and turning them into a kind of flat paper. They also have stars going around their heads in circles. Luffy grabs squashed Kizaru and Saturn and throws both of them to the sea. Kizaru hits a battleship and we see him lying down, panting in the ship. Wow, what a sequence. And finally, people just throwing Devil Fruit users into the sea. You'd think that it would happen so much, but it's very rare that this happens. It's like an instant way to take care of them, especially for the superhero good guy Luffy here, just straight up trying to commit murder essentially, right? But of course, Kizaru is hitting his ship, and we're going to see what happens with Saturn, of course, because he's obviously not going to be taken out that easily. But man, if Luffy really wanted to, he could have just slam dunked them into the sea, and it would have been game over. Also, really cool sequence of Luffy turning them into symbols and then just clapping them together. Of course, he's able to do this with his Devil Fruit abilities because he can make people into rubber as well. However, Saturn flies back like a boomerang and attacks Luffy with his legs. Saturn is using a technique similar to Luffy's Gum Gum no UFO. Luffy dodges the attack and he's angry when he sees Saturn is uninjured. And he says, what? Why isn't he taking any damage after I did all that? And that's a great question. So we're just, led to believe that this is just Saturn's Devil Fruit. Like he's just a tank and he can regenerate. But maybe it's not that. Maybe there's something else going on possibly. Maybe like this isn't like literally Saturn. Maybe this is kind of just like a projection of him in some way, like a tangible projection, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the portals that is summoning him here, because the portals say 5 on it. 5 like Goro say, the 5 Elder Stars or the 5 Elder Planets. So maybe this is not necessarily exclusive to Saturn, but Saturn says something in a little bit that makes me think that maybe it is. I don't know. And again, this whole regeneration and not taking damage business could be related to Emu. Maybe she did something to the Gorosei that allows them to have this ability. Also, it could be tied to why they are ostensibly immortal maybe as well, or they just don't grow old or stopped aging, The 4 members of the Gorosei make contact with Saturn again. Gorosei say, Saturn, there is no time. We cannot allow Vegapunk to talk. Saturn's like, I know, then I shall call you all. Black lightnings appear in Egghead Island. The Marines that are seeing what's happening for the battleships are in shock. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. Saturn says, I know, then I shall call you all in. So I assume that this ability must be his then, or maybe he could just call them in because he is at Egghead. Like they can't just, teleport there from Mary Joie, just kind of like the way that Kuma would be able to, In the epic final double page of the chapter, Saturn touches the ground and 4 giant magic circles appear around him. Huge black flames come up from the magic circles. Luffy is in shock with his eyes popping out of their socket. And he says, what are those? Sanji, carrying Vegapunk, observes in shock the black flames that appear where Luffy is fighting. Sanji says, those things were there back when the Spider Gramp appeared too? And the editor's message is, the stars are assembling. End of chapter, break next week, but we knew that. So the Gorosei are coming to Egghead. And at first it seems like, oh, they're just going to gang up on Luffy and just destroy him. I don't think it's going to be that simple. Obviously, their main reasoning for coming here is to stop the Vegapunk transmission. Because if Vegapunk is able to unleash all of that info, especially to all of the important people in the world, then their matrix that they have over everything is going to crumble. So obviously this is priority number one. And to the fact of where they're sending them freaking selves. And it's like, are we going to see their devil fruits? Like, are they going to transform? That would be incredible, but maybe it's a little too soon to see all of their fruit forms. Although, I don't know, maybe we could just see what they look like possibly, and then they'll just reveal their abilities later on, maybe. And I also think this is going to lead to Luffy eventually leaving Egghead. Like, I don't think he's going to fight all of them to completion. Like, it's way too soon for that, obviously. So, you know, we also have to remember that Dory and Bragi and the other giant pirates are there too, and they're actually on their way to actively come to Luffy. So this might be the point of where they come and get Luffy, and then they take him, you know, to Elbaf, or they just escape the island after this. And the Gorosei do successfully take down Vegapunk's transmission, but I think Vegapunk will be able to get out some information, like something big will leak. Maybe like Emu sits on the empty throne, something like that. And then they cut off the transmission before he could say anything else, you know? But that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments. And please follow me on TikTok and Instagram, whichever platform you like to use more. I'm trying to get 10,000 followers on either of them. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.